Hello to everyone who's joining. We're in our registration period here. And we'll be starting promptly at 4 p.m. Pacific time. A little early Asia time.
Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, we have several people online. Are they admitting into the session that will be starting in just a few minutes? Thank you for
Awesome.
joining us.
Yeah,
Great.
thanks for having me. Yep.
Yeah. So we'll get started in just a few minutes, just after
Okay.
we get finished with the registration here.
Sounds good. No rush.
Good.
Hi, Rebecca.
Good.
Hi, Rebecca. This is Lawrence.
Hey, Lawrence.
Yeah. So it seems to be a good day because right after your event, there will be the presidential town hall.
I know. So we're gonna end at 5 p.m. so that everybody can watch.
Yeah, because there will be two of the town halls in parallel, so we have to switch channel.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they are at the same time.
I know.
Or have two screens at the same time.
Thursdays are now a very big day.
Yeah.
So everyone who's joining for this evening, I will have a poll. I know it's one of our popular features is our poll. And we'll be doing our usual Q&A with the VC, which is this week Han Shen. And we're just waiting for more people to join before the official start time. Lawrence, it's a great background shot you have there. Your virtual background's very nice.
Yeah, I feel like I'm in Hong Kong.
Yeah, I know.
That is the sea view from our head office.
Oh, very nice. Yeah, I remember it very well.
Yeah, come around, visit us, visit our Hong Kong head office more often.
Yeah, well, when I can. Eventually this will improve and conditions will improve and we'll be able to travel freely again.
Yes, some countries, including Hong Kong, at the city, there will be the travel bubble being arranged, whereby when you have a negative test report, you need not go through the quarantine.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So Hong Kong is arranging.
They just changed that, right?
Yeah, is arranging with some other Asian countries.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, good. Well, 1 minute to go. I think we have quite a few late birds. This is just like a real event, you know, people show up a little bit late. Some people show up early. Okay, here's another person, a just-in-time person. You know, it's funny because I have all these name tags and programs from all my Silicon Dragon events in the past. And I don't know whether I'll be able to use them in the future. I have hundreds of name tags and hundreds of programs. You know, when we did printed programs. So eventually I'll find a home for those. Maybe I need to donate them. So Silicon Dragon Museum Archive. Silicon Dragon Archive.
Yeah, actually, you can form an alumni under the Silicon Dragon alumni of speakers.
Oh yeah, there's so many. So I see Usense has just joined us, Chinese startup, tech startup here in Santa Clara with China component. Usense. Okay, well, I'll keep admitting people, but I think it's now time to start, so we will. Thank you everyone for joining us today. This is one of our regular Silicon Global Online series, and we've been holding these since April, and it's been fun. So hopefully many of you have joined us in the past for our prior sessions. If you want to find out more about Silicon Dragon, what we do, this is a good slide to remember because it gives you a reference of our places to reach us and all of our resources as well, including the books and a number of videos that are online at YouTube and also at silicondragonventures.com. So great, there are many, many people now joining, so that's wonderful. And without further ado, I would like to introduce our speaker for this evening, our guest, our victim for this evening, VC venture capitalist Han Shen, founding partner of iFly.vc. Hello, Han. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for
Hi,
being
Rebecca.
on the show.
Thanks for having me.
On the show. Yeah, no, it's great to see you. And
Yeah,
yeah,
same here.
This is gonna be a fun evening. We'll be doing some dialogue between the two of us, and then some questions from the audience in the chat box. Then we'll have a poll, a little bit of group discussion. If you want to comment, just unmute yourself to comment. And then we're going to end in the evening, well, at 5 o'clock with networking and toast. So we're in for a really fun session. I would like to introduce Han. Here's a few tidbits about Han. He grew up in Nanjing. He resides in the San Francisco Bay Area. Well, I found out that he knows a lot about chemistry. Nanjing University, master's, PhD, University of Chicago, PhD, master's, chemistry, wow. MBA, Wharton. And then you were working with this specialty chemical company as well as a technical leader there, and you have 4 patents. So that's pretty impressive. And then venture investment consultant at Moore Davido, and then another firm, Arch Venture. Then you became an associate at Vantage Point Venture Partners for a couple of years. And then a partner at Formation 8, which is famous for their Palantir investment and a few others as well that we'll talk to Han about. And then Han made the big leap to set up his own firm, iFly.vc. And, you know, I knew he was kind of an adventuresome soul, but then I really realized it when I found out that he has his pilot's license. So, good. If you're getting good with Han, maybe he'll take you on a ride. Okay, a little bit about iFly, and Han, you can chime in at any time and correct me or add. Han started this in 2016. It's a micro VC firm that invests in underserved demographics, which I think is interesting. Fund 1 was 10 investments in 3 years. Also very good performance in the top tier in the 2016 vintage. Fund 2 was raised late last year, 50 million in size. And iFly generally invest in the range of 1 to 5 million and investing in US tech startups, not so much China, but a China component can come in handy. The initial focus is on commerce. Han has several commerce companies in his portfolio. And Han, I'd love to hear more about some of those commerce deals that you have. So we'll get into that. So one of his notable past deals is Oculus, which was acquired by Facebook. That was a huge exit. So congratulations on being in on that investment, Han. And then congratulations on starting your own firm as well. So that's just a little prelude to what our discussion will be. And I'm going to stop the slides now, and we'll start with a Q&A with my screen sharing is stop share. Okay, now here we go. Here's everyone. So Han, tell us what has it been like, just to set the stage for us, what has it been like really running your own venture firm?
Yeah, so again, thanks, Rebecca, for having me. And hi, everyone. I recognize a few names. I know you have a lot of other fun activities during work from home, so it's great to connect here. So in terms of what's it like being a solo GP running a startup fund, I would say it's a very humbling experience. When you raise a couple $1 million for a startup, you can get started, but for a VC, that's like a peanut. So you have to raise a lot more. You have to knock on many doors on the LP side. So I told entrepreneurs these days when they got turned down by some VC, I said, look, I can set the worst benchmark in terms of how many investors I have to talk to, which is over 300 before I raised my first fund.
Oh, that's probably a lot of
more
travel.
importantly, yeah. So by flying United economy only, I've maintained my 1K status the last couple of years.
Okay.
That's not a bragging point, but yeah, it is a kind of a due we have to pay as an entrepreneur.
No, you can't play right now.
But I think more important.
There's no flight, right?
Henry, can you mute yourself?
Not today. I mean, not this year.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Han, go ahead.
And yeah. No, so I was gonna say, but more importantly, beyond the pain of travel, all these kind of a due you have to pay as an entrepreneur, as a startup fund, it's more about how we set the stage to be sort of differentiated, right? Because we ask the startups, what's your differentiation? But we got to ask ourselves as a VC fund, and what's our differentiation? So long story short, there are gazillion funds out there, super smart people, incredible pedigree, and phenomenal credentials. So what I decided to work on the iFly, couple of things. Number one, we don't go after the buzzword. I mean, being Silicon Valley for the past 11 years, every year you can watch a couple buzzwords come up and they got busted. But I think we are not in the business of collecting logos, because there are still these pockets when they are underappreciated, when they are being ignored by other VCs. But as long as the problems are real and if they are still worth solving, and then as an investor, iFly would just love to do our homework, right? If there's nothing exciting, if we don't see the right fit, we don't have to invest. But if we do come across investment opportunities we are super excited about, then we don't really write a small check, $100,000 here, $1,000 there. And instead, our initial check size is a couple $1 million. And we try to get a reasonable amount of ownership. And then given our fund size, we actually build a very concentrated portfolio. So that's what you're saying, for the first couple of years, we only made a handful of investments. But those sort of things pointed us to lots of motivation, right? Not only we have a smaller portfolio to manage, but also just given our involvement and ownership in each of the companies, we are super motivated to help these entrepreneurs. Not only that, we can also afford our time bandwidth to bring resource, network, context to work with our entrepreneurs. So those pieces are kind of interconnected. And eventually, we had a couple of companies that passed Series B or Series C that became primary value driver for the fund performance. Now, I'm more than happy to share a couple examples, during the discussion later.
Yeah. I'm interested in particular in this Asian grocery startup that's going like gangbusters. It's really taken off in the COVID-19 era. Can you talk about that one?
Yeah, surely. Yeah. So this is an investment from Fund One. What they do is they go after the Asian grocery business in the United States. Most people think, oh, how big a deal is that? The reality is it's about $60 billion annual spend every single year. And still, to me, that's a lot of opportunity out there. But the demand is being underserved in terms of the distance to the store, the selection, access, price, quality, everything, right? So given the market size, given the quality and the user experience, there's a lot of work to do to make it better. I actually initially connected with the team in 2016 when they were 1 year old. They already had a very steep growth, but actually I decided to turn down the founder because at the time their model was very, very different. They were mobilizing people in different neighborhoods to collect the orders and then distribute. Even though the metrics was very impressive, I was just concerned, how do you really do the quality control? Maybe Rebecca and I are awesome group leaders in the neighborhood, but what about this other guy, right? So I decided to pass, and the company still raised a lot of money from other investors. But it turned out in 2017, the company had a big hit because, the hit was actually not a good one, the bad one. So lots of user experience got destroyed because as they scaled, the quality became a big problem. And they decided to pivot. On the one hand, all the team founders and the founding team members decided not to quit. And they even put out their savings to give to the company to just continue surviving. At the same time, they also recognized all the problem with the group buy model, and they pivoted to a end-to-end vertically integrated model. And 2018, they came back, not only survived, also started growing again. And we re-engaged end of 2018, and I just love what they have been doing. And I got impressed by their tenacity and everything. But at that point, nobody wanted to invest in the company. They all got scared. And we were essentially the only investor of that round in December 2018. So we came in with a sizable check, but the business started taking off 2019 and even more this year because of COVID's tailwind. They have grown beyond the Bay Area to cover entire major cities on the West Coast, also opened business in New Jersey, New York, and they went live in Philadelphia last week, and they are about to open business in Houston in 2 weeks. Not only the top line grew a lot, but also they have become cash flow positive. Even the second quarter this year was a profitable quarter. And later after we invested, their metrics and everything became impressive again, right? So Lightspeed came in the Series B, so did VMG, and they just closed the Series C led by DST in July. And in that particular round, they didn't have to raise, so we took it like as an opportunistic raise, see who would be interested in doing the investment. It turned out within 12 days, 4 term sheets came in. And other than DST, the other 3 VCs are also top-notch, world-class brand names. So at Series C, the valuation actually shot from the 20 months ago by a pretty big multiple. Yeah, so that's a kind of quick snapshot about the company. And if you are in the Bay Area or San Diego, LA, Seattle, Oregon, New York, please give it a try. The website is saywe.com.
Well, what do you get if you order something? You get frozen food or canned food or fresh food?
Oh yeah, great question. A variety of things. They have thousands of options from frozen food, vegetables, fruits, meat, seafood, dry goods as well. If
I
you
see.
order a minimum of $35, they deliver to your doorsteps, no delivery fee. So that's also attractive to customers.
I see. So, well, that was from your first fund, right?
That's right.
Right. So maybe can you tell us about Fund 2 and the process of raising Fund 2? And it's a micro fund, 50 million. You raised it pretty recently, and right now you're in the middle of COVID, but you're still making investments during this period?
Yes, we are still active. In fact, we closed 2 investments in the past couple months as leading investor. And most of the LPs from Fund 1 actually re-upped for Fund 2, which is very nice. And there's a lot of supportive people out there. In terms of a strategy, more or less the same. It's a research-based, thesis-driven, concentrated portfolio so that we can actually provide meaningful value add to the founders. In terms of the space we are excited about, we are talking about the consumer space in the United States, but particularly all these underserved, underappreciated demographics, whether it could be, ethnic minorities, immigrants, underbanked, and people in the remote communities, and so on and so forth. The mainstream business does not slice or dice the market segments based on those sort of factors. But the demand is there, the pain point is there. So whenever there's a gap between the demand and supply, I believe someone smart will come up with a better way to deliver goods or service. And let's see what else. Oh yeah, fundraising in this environment. Yeah, obviously it's slower than I wanted to see, but still it was incredible. We had a couple of LP commitments. They actually decided to invest without even ever taking an in-person meeting.
Okay. Are these mainly family offices, or who are some of your LPs?
Yeah, so it's a combination of family offices and high net worth individuals. But what's common is most of them are incredibly successful tech entrepreneurs.
I see.
Yeah, so they are the founders or co-founders of Palantir, Crisis.com, which is a e-commerce acquired by Amazon. On Asia side, we have early founding team members of Tencent. We got the founders of Dianping, and so on and so forth. So collectively, the total market cap of the companies they started now is more than $900 billion. And the benefit of having these incredible individuals as LPs is whenever they told me they would invest in my fund, I would say, no, I appreciate your trust. I appreciate the support. But not only I like to have that, but also can I ask for your time? They always said yes. So the benefit for our entrepreneur is every once in a while, we organize these very intimate small group kind of office hours between our individual LPs and our founders, because they still know a whole lot about building a company, team, that sort of thing. So I think that's a plus.
Okay, that is a plus. Are any of them on a board of one of your portfolio companies?
What's that?
Are they on a board of any of your portfolio companies?
Oh, so they are not. But I usually serve on the board of the company especially if we lead the investment. But I think aside from the formality, I think our value add is going for the strategic discussion, recruiting of key hires, and then when it comes to raising the next round, typically, I would actually go out to talk to a bunch of my contacts on Sand Hill and socializing, soft marketing to build a short list of potential lead investors. So once the process gets started, it just became very structured and managed well, and that got a lot of attention and momentum.
I see. Well, has this U.S.-China tech tension, has it changed your strategy of investing?
Not so much. The last couple of years since I started iFly, we mainly just focus on the consumer play in the United States, not into any of those highly sensitive tech areas that can be subject to CFIUS and so on and so forth. And I'm a US citizen. I came from China, but my entire career connection network has been built out of here. But one thing I think I do want to point out, part of our strategy is that we actually constantly still learn, and watch and learn what's happening in the consumer internet space in China. The market there is really hot and competitive, right? Yeah. Bloody ocean. Whoever survived and thrived must have done a lot of things right. So our take is let's learn and then selectively take what makes sense to our investment strategy here, and our portfolio company support as well. For instance, lots of companies in China burn so much cash on online grocery delivery. So last year, I sent the CEO of We, which is that online Asian grocery startup in the portfolio. I arranged 2 trips for him to be in China to talk to all the, I guess 5 out of the 5 top players in China, learn from both their best practice and all the pitfalls they ran into. So those trips were phenomenal because it definitely helped him think about, how he wants to, strategize which way he wants to avoid. So I think that's kind of something unique we can bring to the table.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. I know when we were doing a preview of this session, you talked about how some of the Chinese lessons from the tech companies that you're applying to your portfolio companies today, or they can apply. And you mentioned an example like Pinduoduo with the way that they obtain users. Could you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. This is the actually exciting part. So Pinduoduo is this Chinese e-commerce company that had a phenomenal growth, went public so fast. But one thing that's phenomenal about the company's early growth was they mobilized users on social network like Wechat to share those deals and form a one-off group by activities, right? So our company, we learned a lot from that best practice and already perfect that in their way to scale their user base, either through WeChat, Facebook, Line, Kakao part of the world. So net, their user acquisition cost is 80% less than their peers in the online grocery space, which is a humongous saving, right? And it's not only applicable to their Chinese users, but also I recognize, Korean Americans, Japanese Americans, Filipino, Indian, so on and so forth, use the same kind of a way on their platform to be incentivized through the gamification to share and buy together, right? So that's one exciting example I think we learned.
Yeah, no, that's a great example. I like that, how you're applying lessons from the Chinese business models to US companies. That is a real differentiator for your fund, I think. So going forward now, you've invested, what is 3 companies from your second fund so far?
2 so far.
2 so far. Well, how do you choose those companies? And who, what companies are they?
Yeah, so the way we choose to work with company is highly based on our research and thesis. Now, there are so many sectors that could be exciting to other VCs, but again, we try to look for opportunities that may look non-obvious today, right? Because I believe that for early stage VC, our job is to identify those potential winners when they still look like underdogs. So in one case, it's a consumer-facing fintech service for the underbanked population in this country. The team is phenomenal. They're about to launch their product in Q1 next year. And another company.
What's the name of that?
So they are both stealth mode, so I'm not like allowed to disclose yet. Okay. Yeah. So hopefully we'll share that very soon. The second company is basically looking into the restaurant chain business. If I ask a question, what is the single most successful Asian restaurant chain in the United States? The answer is Panda Express, right? But out of 100,000 Asian restaurants, Panda has about 2,200 locations. It's a tiny market share, right? So you would ask why for burgers, pizza, Mexican food, the top 3-4 players would account for like 40, 50% of the market share. But for the Asian restaurant business, it's so fragmented. And so Panda early on did a lot of things, even back in the 80s, to digitize a process, standardize a process, train their staff, and so on and so forth. So that gives them the methodology to scale and still profitably, right? Today, I think my number is the 2,200 locations produce almost $4 billion in revenue. In the net profit is like in the mid-teens in terms of percentage points. So if we have this, actually the founder for the second company had the aspiration to provide tasty, nutritious Asian food, but using the similar methodology. And the goal is to also build a restaurant chain for any American in this country. So we actually led the round and just closed that.
Okay. Well, you must like Chinese food. I don't know. You have a lot of, seems like you have a lot of online food companies. Is that right?
Yeah, I think, it's not because of my personal preference. I just think that's where the market is.
Okay, that's where the market is. Okay.
Yeah, when you dig really deep, you realize there's a lot of unmet need. And the same thing is it's true about, Hispanic and some of the other verticals.
Yeah.
So that's why, and we're also talking to some Hispanic kind of a market oriented opportunities. And we think there's a lot of kind of a learning we can pass along across between different verticals.
Okay. What's the biggest lesson you've learned from your investing experience? So, you've had an amazing career that you were at Formation 8, which was the VC firm that was involved with Palantir and also Oculus, that huge exit sold to Facebook. I mean, what do you draw from your career experience?
Yeah, so I think maybe one or two takeaways. The first one is I think that kind of a preparedness really matters in my profession. By the way, Palantir is not a company that Formation 8 invested. In fact, Palantir co-founder Joe Lonsdale was a co-founder of Formation 8, and he's also an investor in my fund. But in terms of Oculus, as an example, when I spoke to the team first time and saw the demo, which is called like a developer kit 1, DK1, by all standard, even back then, I would say that's a piece of garbage, right? The latency, the resolution was just awful. So you either drink the Kool-Aid and invest, and maybe it will turn out to be a big mistake and money loss, or you think, oh, it looks so bad, I don't want to invest, I don't know how that's going to get better, then you miss an opportunity. And for me personally, it was I was just very lucky because before Formation 8, I was at another firm, Vantage Point. One of my projects was to look into the 3D TV space. I did a lot of work, and then I realized, gosh, the content creation was too expensive. So that turned into a vicious cycle. You can spend $9,000 at Costco back then, like 10 years ago, buying a 3D TV, but you don't have the content to watch, right? And you end up watching the same 2D content. Then what's the point of buying the $9,000 3D TV? So, but the benefit of the study was I learned a whole lot about the tech stack, the roadmap, and also people who are involved in the vision and 3D space. So when I saw Oculus, not only I came to understand why their tech stack and roadmap actually would make sense, but also, of course, I talked to a bunch of my friends in Southern California to understand better whether some of the claims would be real. And so that was a point before most people even recognize the word VR. So I helped Formation 8 invest in the Series A and followed in the Series B, and that investment returned probably, I think, $200 million back to our LPs. So that's why even later on, I also believe that if you present me the best medical device deal, right, I have no idea about it. Why should I invest? And that's why when it comes to grocery, actually I started looking into grocery space back in 2014, 2015. And it took 3-4 years before I made the first investment in the grocery space, which was we, right? So that's point number one. And point number two, I openly tell people, Han Shen, I'm the single worst bottleneck of iFly, right? That the way how I think, how I strategize, how I recruit people, how I invest, how I set the culture for our small little team still matters a lot. But by that, I also have to say, for every single startup, the founder, the CEO, the leadership team, essentially is the bottleneck, right? Or sets a glass ceiling. I don't want to be negative or harsh on it, but I recognize consistently, if you don't grow the team, if you don't grow the CEO and the key members of the team, eventually you cannot grow the company. So I care a whole lot about not only the past learning curve of the founder, but also look at all kinds of ways to assess whether the founder can further grow along with the company. In the past 11 years of investment career and experience, of course, I had a mixed kind of results, but then I think what's common is so much absolute about the macro, but what's common is really the founder and the senior leadership team members set the course of the company that largely determine the outcome of success versus failure.
Okay, good, good. So I think we're going to segue into some Q&A now, and we do have a question here from Hal Kalman. Hello, Hal. He wants to know about your patents. You have these 4 patents. What are they in?
Yeah, so I'm a chemist by training. So my patents were in the space of material catalysis. So way back then, it was like 2004, 2005 when I had those patents filed.
Okay, so anyone on the screen here, if you have a question, you can type it into the chat here at the bottom. And while we're waiting for people to warm up their questions, I'm going to launch our poll. So here goes our poll. Okay, you can see the questions here. Okay, good. Another question came in. That's a good question. So while you're looking at the poll, let's get this question answered. How did you shift your career into venture capital? And I was wondering that too when I was putting together the slides for today's show. It's like, oh, all of a sudden you became a venture capitalist, but I saw you were a consultant in between. Why don't you tell everyone about it? How did you become a venture capitalist? How did you switch careers like that and become, because I'm sure there are people on this screen who want to become venture capitalists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't even I didn't even know there's something called venture capital until probably 2006, as I was preparing for my business school application. Back then I was working for this Fortune 500 company on the East Coast. I had a pretty good ride within the company. I was managing 30 people based on the project based on the innovation I had, but I realized, even though I had a pretty good commercial success of based on the patents I had, I knew very little about the business aspect of innovation. So I decided to go to business school to really jumpstart the learning. And during business school, I actually was working on a startup with a few friends in the Philadelphia area. In 2008, I was going from the first year to the second year. I spent the whole summer actually even coding, prototyping. We had our first term sheet by end of August. I was actually thinking whether I should take a leave of absence from my second year to work on the venture full time, but something bad happened. Actually, one of my co-founders had a very serious illness. That was a life-threatening situation. And of course, luckily his life was saved. Nothing horrible happened except that he had to stay in ER for a few days. But then, it took a while to recover, and he told me, you got to start thinking about your plan B. But honestly, I didn't have a plan B. I had 100% attention to the startup. I did not do any recruiting. And then, of course, financial crisis hit very soon. I was actually pretty lost for a few months by end of 2008. But then somebody asked me, oh, how about venture capital, right? I was like, yeah, interesting. I saw a few VCs when I was pitching for the startup. And the simple thought back then was, okay, if I could get into a VC, park myself for a few years, I'll probably get to see more interesting company, either to join them or maybe to meet some awesome people to start a new company together. So that was my original motivation to start try out of VC. But when you mentioned the consultant gig, that was because 2009 was a tough year for any kind of recruiting, including venture capital, which was already very tough to do anyway.
Right.
I was flying back and forth between East Coast and West Coast on a monthly basis.
Right.
And I talked to a lot of firms, and they didn't have a job offer. So I said, okay, if you have a smaller budget for a short-term gig for a few months, then I'll be happy to consider that. So that's how I landed those consulting gigs at a more Davidal and Arch before a full-time position at Vantage Point. So that's my story.
That's a very good idea, and I think that's a lesson for others who are here thinking about getting into venture capital while we're in this other downturn right now. Is say, okay, well, maybe you have a project I could work on for a couple of months. Yeah, and that's your foot in the door, right? So,
totally.
Yeah, all right, that's great. Here's our poll, Silicon Dragon poll number 3. This is anonymous, don't worry about it. No one's gonna be quoted. It's not gonna be shared. I don't know who it, all, you know, who's answering what here. All I can say is that should WeChat be banned in the U.S.? Almost everyone says no. Okay, what is the likelihood that TikTok and WeChat will be banned in the U.S.? Well, that's a little more split, but the edge goes, thank you for voting. The edge goes to not likely. Okay, will you, should WeChat and TikTok be banned in the US? Okay, universal no. Interesting, okay. Look, I just try to do this for fun, so don't worry about, like I said, don't worry about ever being quoted here. Will you, as quickly on the next question about, will you watch the Trump town hall this evening? Which is why we're ending at 5 o'clock today. Wow, that's a 50-50. Okay, anyone else voting there? No, okay, well, thank you everyone for your votes. Feel free to type in a chat question that I might have missed or that you would like to be polled, and we can add it for our next week's show. Okay. All right, I'm going to end that polling for now. Okay, who else has a comment to make? Okay, I see a lot of people online here. Anyone else with a comment? Han, what else do you want to add? What do you want to add? I mean, I think you're, okay, here comes one from you, Sense.
Yeah, I think there are a few more questions.
Yeah, here's one. This is a good one. How COVID-19 pandemic changes VC investment strategy?
I think it really depends on the firm, the fund, and individual LPs. Excuse me, GPs. I recognize those big, large funds are still on the move constantly. I mean, they just closed big fund. You know, some of them can be $1 billion fund. They just told their LPs they would want to invest. So I think they are actually under pressure to deploy. So that's why for companies, especially the good ones who are past Series B, C, or D, the market is still very, very hot. That's why when our company, was out there in June, July, raising the Series C, I could even just feel that directly. But for early stage, again, I think the question I have to ask myself is what stays the same, what doesn't? So that's related to another theme. I think another question I think one of the audience asked about the theme that I'm excited about, which is related to COVID situation. So when I say the underserved consumer demand and underserved demographic in this country, we are still talking about trillions of dollars of annual spending out of the GDP, right? But when they are under stress, people will pay more attention to the cost benefit, how they kind of digest the cost and everything. And then when it especially comes to the basic necessities of people's livelihood, even during 2008, people still have to live a life, pay for the food, have a shelter. So that part will just not go away. I think the financial crisis, if we ever encounter one more post-COVID, it's just about how much disposable income will disappear for the short time being. But the flip side is it actually gives the chance for those companies who can outperform their competition to address the needs of the consumer demand, incredible window to stand out to outperform. And I'll give you an example back in 2008 when restaurant business in general took a big hit, right? Most of them didn't make it, which is what we see here today. The winners actually found it was a golden opportunity to start expanding because the competition is gone. The vacancy of the commercial real estate is up. The rent has gone down, right? One example is Panera Bread. I mean, they didn't do anything to expand between 2005 and 2008 when their competition was all getting the leverage, the loan to add more restaurant locations. But guess what? 2008, they had a lot of cash on the balance sheet. When the rent was down, everybody panicked. It was the beginning of their aggressive expansion. Right, and that's what we are seeing here today. The online, the restaurant chain startup we just invested, they signed a lease with landlord. The rent is roughly 45% less than the market asks even today's environment. So think about that, right? 2, 3, 4 years later, when their neighbor has another restaurant thinking about competition, that difference in the rent is already a huge delta in the cost structure, right? So again, going back to the theme, what we are excited about, I think we are kind of on the contrarian side to be a little bit anti-cyclic. I just think it's never there's never a perfect time or imperfect time to invest. You just have to find what fits you as a GP. Yeah.
Right. Well, here's a question about, have you found any creative ways or new creative ways of completing your due diligence process during the COVID-19?
It's kind of an 80-20 split, right? A lot of the stuff in terms of data, metrics, you can always do that online through Dropbox, through Zoom. But I'm the kind of old school. I still prefer to have an in-person meeting with masks on, social distance. I want to take a very, very long walk, or maybe even several walks with people, right? Because I want to know the person, who they are, what the kind of person they are like, and what kind of people they are associated with. Because this is kind of probably just cliche, as every VC say. It's a journey we're gonna share, almost like a marriage, right? I want to make sure we can agree to disagree down the road. So that matters a lot to us.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's at least 10 years. You're going to be tied at the hip. Okay, here's a question from Michael Jalliman. Would you consider an investment in a company with a new 3D technology that does not require glasses or goggles?
Yeah, I would definitely say yes, I would consider. But obviously, we invest depending on a lot of things, right? The product readiness, the market, and also go-to-market. I think technology enabled product is always exciting to me. But I recognize, depending on the path entrepreneurs choose, sometimes it's about to B or to C, or even within to B or to C, there are still different ways to go to market. So the choice that people make also can affect how they gain the traction, how they can scale in a cost-efficient or inefficient way.
Okay. There's another question that just came in, and the person is saying that your investing strategy is a little bit like John Doerr's method, and that you guys both find companies that are kind of in the sneaking or stealth mode. And Doerr also majored in EE. So her question is what do you think is the most important part of investing?
So over time, my answer has shifted and evolved. And now my answer would be, in the past, I would say it was so much about tech, but nowadays, I just care so much about the quality of the founder. Not so much about the profile on paper, the school, or all these kind of pedigree things. Right. There's one piece I care a whole lot about, is the tenacity, right? Startup is not an easy journey. As a founder of a startup fund, I've gone through a lot of tough moments. So the tenacity is a key piece I recognize, I value a lot. For instance, now even take We as an example, since I just talked about their ups and downs. When they were 4 days away from running out of cash, they still refused to give up, right? Just think about that moment. If any of us went through under so much stress, actually the founder and CEO, he actually sold his house to get some cash back to give it to the company, right? So that's a tough decision, but that really sets apart different founders, and that's what I actually pay extra attention to now. Okay,
so Hal's commenting that you actually look for management and use cases rather than university credentials. That doesn't matter as much.
I'm sorry?
Hal's comment is saying that you really care a lot more about the management and the use cases rather than the university credentials, and I think you made that point. So that's good.
Yeah, I would not rule out every single point, right? So the point is, if someone has gone through a top tier university program, it means something, right? But the point is, I just cannot make a bet based on, this guy went to Stanford, MIT, Wharton, Chicago, right?
Yeah. So Tracy wants to know, well, then what are the 3 characteristics that you care about, and what will be the deal breaker?
the 3 characteristics about people. Is that the
Yeah,
question?
well, if
Yeah.
you're thinking about doing a deal, right?
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
walking around with this person, evaluating whether you're going to do this deal, right? So what
Yeah.
are the 3 characteristics? What are the 3 things that you look for, characteristics?
Yeah, I think tenacity is one thing I mentioned.
Yeah, okay.
To me, it goes ups and downs.
Yeah,
The second one is the growth potential.
okay.
You know, nobody's born to be a leader, company CEO that manage
Right.
a public company, and that sort of thing. So I care a lot about how motivated people are to learn, to grow. That's the second. The third one is actually strategic thinking. People sometimes tell me, oh yeah, strategy is all about big companies. But I
Right.
actually disagree, because especially when you are small and young, you have very limited resource and manpower. And actually it matters a lot to think strategically where you want to deploy your resource, and which path you want to go. So from the company level to the product to your own team setup, it matters a lot. So those 3 things are probably the top 3 I can say
Okay.
to answer the question.
Right.
And what's the second part of the question?
It's about evaluating the founders specifically, and
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
you
Yeah.
answered that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So that's good. That's good. Well, let me share screen for a second again and move on to our next part of our show. All right. And meanwhile, you could keep your questions coming, but this will be an opportunity for you to actually unmute yourself and ask a question directly, because we're moving into our networking part of the forum. So feel free to unmute yourself, but don't talk over one another. This is our discussion period, and hopefully everyone will feel like discussing. What is the poll question you would like me to ask? Tell me. What is the poll question you would like me to ask next? Just type it in here. Type your answer, or just unmute yourself and tell me. What do you want me to ask about Biden and Trump? What their China strategy?
That
Who's
would be
going to be?
interesting.
How that's going to change? Biden or Trump? How's it going to change?
Yeah.
What else?
Yeah,
Michael?
that would be interesting. I was just thinking that as you asked, but that would be interesting.
Oh, okay. Anyone else? I mean, anybody have the answer to that question? I was on another Zoom meeting today. I was a speaker or panelist, and that came up. And a fellow from Cato Institute in Washington, D.C. said, well, he didn't see much change coming between Trump and Biden, but except for tone. And I agree with that in tone. Biden would be softer, but he doesn't see much change coming in the China strategy, and that things will continue to be very tough for China, and how the U.S. attitude toward China and the tech tensions and Washington, D.C. pushback to China. Okay, who wants to comment? Come on, let's get some controversy.
You know, there's a chance if he went with his own instincts that he would support and see the benefit of a positive relationship with China and not buy into the current climate. But that would take strength that he might not be able to muster.
Right.
But I think it's also an open question in terms of maybe the venture community and the tech community that benefits from collaboration with China being more proactive in impacting policy in a way that keeps business going.
Mm-hmm.
You know, between the two companies, rather than like that whole theme that I loved of one of your in-person sessions, you know, where it was talking about the decoupling between China and the US
Right.
or collaboration, right? Like that was a super prescient and valuable discussion that you had.
By the way, if any of you missed that session with Roy Bahat of Bloomberg Beta, it's published in our newsletter. The highlights of that discussion are published in our newsletter and also the blog, so you can check it out. And I have to say that we have some great sessions coming up. In January, we are going to be featuring 2 tech icons. And I know you can't guess who they will be, so I have to tell you. One of them is John Chambers of Cisco, who now has his own venture firm J2C Ventures. And he's invested in Asia, and he's invested in the US as well, of course. And John Chambers, former chairman of Cisco, has some very strong opinions about China. I interviewed him just recently. The other person, tech icon, we'll be having in January is Brad Smith of Intuit. So what's Intuit? Intuit is TurboTax, and their other main product, I'm blanking on it right now, besides TurboTax. It's another huge software system that went mainstream. Anyhow, Brad Smith of Intuit, another great tech icon. And so those two are coming up in January. So I'll be sharing more details about those later on. It's too soon right now. Okay, anything else?
Hi, Han.
Yes.
This is Lawrence in West Hong Kong. So congratulations to your investment in We. My family is a very frequent user of We. So in addition to that, it's not only grocery, it's also restaurants takeaway. So I live in this side of the bay, and I have the opportunity to buy from the East Bay restaurants, which I will never go over myself so far into some of the other cities.
Okay.
So
Good.
now,
Thank you, Lawrence.
So with your very in-depth experience, both in the US and China, let me ask you this. How do you see the growth prospects of startups in the US versus in China? Because both ecosystems are very different. So, and I still remember Rebecca Fannin's remarks in her book, The Battle of 1,000 Groupons. That is
yeah.
Meituan, Meituan and Dianping.
I remember reporting that live. It was just amazing. Everyone
right.
had
So how do you see the growth prospects of startups in the US versus startups in China?
Yes. So I think a couple observations here. In China, just because of the base of the population is so big, and there's a lot of uplifting driving force for companies to get involved. And at the same time, there is capital from domestic and foreign investors. It's not surprising when something catches the attention, everybody jumps in. And when there's very little differentiation, that when you get into the battle of the 1,000 Groupon-like companies.
Yeah.
And here, it's unlikely that capital will behave like that. But I would say consumer spend on both sides is always evolving, right? The demand is always changing, evolving based on the generational shift, the demographic, and so on and so forth. So by default, supply is always kind of playing the catch-up game. So that constantly creates some gap between the demand and supply that someone can come up with a better way to do it right. And that's why on both sides of the ocean, US and China, Alibaba or Amazon are huge, but they can just never stop other innovators from somewhere to create new ideas and new companies. Pinduoduo is such an example. And here we have a couple e-commerce companies that went public in the past 5-10 years. And from my previous fund, Formation 8, we led the Series A investment of Wish that's just filed for IPO, and knock on wood, everything hopefully goes well. And so my takeaway is, devil's are in details. It takes the insights, the market insights of entrepreneurs to recognize the gap. And then it also takes some new technology enablement to make it better, cheaper, more efficient. And that's how I see on the consumer side. The enterprise part of the world is very different. And here, I think the majority of the venture dollars are poured into enterprise play, which actually gets the deal very, very expensive. I've seen some late stage investment at 30x ARR multiple. Wow, this is just incredible, expensive investment. On China's side, the enterprise is still kind of in its early years. It will still take a while to see how they pan out. But also what's something interesting here is to observe is, again, even though there's tension between China and the United States at a government level, just from my own observation, entrepreneurs, investors are still talking, right? People are still sharing information, sharing ideas. And so hopefully after the election, whoever wins the election, things will settle to stabilize a little bit. And I think we will all benefit from the two countries in a good relationship.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, good. I think we're going to be moving to wrap things up here, and I would like everyone to give Han a round of applause. Thank you, Han. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
And wait, don't hang up yet. You have to do the toast. Did everyone remember the toast?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Han. And a toast to you. Congratulations.
Thank you, Han.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Rebecca.
And then, let me just end this properly with the shared screen. Okay, and thank our series sponsor, Invest Hong Kong. You just heard from Lawrence on a Zoom session here. So thank you, Lawrence. Thank you, Invest Hong Kong. Really appreciate it. As I mentioned before, we have our tech icons coming up January 21st, January 28th. Stay tuned, save the date. That's going to be really interesting. And next week, we have from Singapore, a venture capitalist, Jeff Payne from Golden Gate Ventures. He'll be on at 5 p.m. Pacific time because, we have to take into account the time change. Then the next program after that is going to be Hong Kong related, Silicon Dragon Hong Kong 2020. It's November 3rd, 4 p.m. our time. November 4th, Hong Kong time. And you can see here some of the great speakers that we have lined up. Jeff Chi of Vickers, James Mee of Lightspeed, and this lady here from Zen Fund, Cameron Elian, he'll be a keynote speaker, Global Catalyst, Edith Young from Race Capital, Charles Ng from Invest Hong Kong, Irene Chu from KPMG. This is another VC here from Hong Kong, from Mind Fund. And so it's going to be a great program. We're going to be announcing our VC of the year at that program as well, so you won't want to miss it. You can sign up online. And yes, our final thank yous, and thank you for everyone for joining us. Thank you, Han. Please check out silicondragonventures.com, and then let's all just wave goodbye. Goodbye, everyone. Hope to see you next Thursday. Next Thursday,
Yeah,
5
thank
p.m.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye,
Rebecca.
Han.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Han, for
Bye,
sharing.
Rebecca.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay,
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.